I'm sitting there feeling really guilty, and to this team, and that we sorry we couldn't give you breaks and how bad it was. And we finished up this family time talking about what they'd done and what they'd accomplished and giving them pizza and thanking them. And I hear her turn to the young man sitting next to her and say this statement. She goes, "I love working at this place." And I'm like, "What? I just worked you all day long. I couldn't give you a break. I'm feeling bad." And she says, "I love her." It just drove home to us how important it was that they were the story.
Welcome to the Prosper Brief, a show dedicated to elevating the future of the food service and hospitality industry. I am your host, Jeremiah Wynn, the content and marketing manager here at Prosper, and today we have two very special guests. Our first guest is Ray Johnson, a renowned executive consultant who has served in the restaurant industry for over 30 years, and joining him is Scott Moore, founder of Maple Street Biscuit Company that was sold to Cracker Barrel a few years back, and last year he started a new venture called Calico Cactus. I'm really excited about our conversation today. We've all heard the term, "it takes a village," but these two individuals, they truly live by those words. Today we'll be exploring how community can shape restaurant success. Stay with us.
What would you do if I told you that the difference between good and great when it comes to customer service and leadership isn't this massive overhaul, but it's indeed a game of inches? I'm Ryan Leake, and at Accelerate, I'm going to be bringing you the game of inches, 6 rules for winning in customer service and leadership. Success in business and leadership isn't about making this giant leap. It's about making small, consistent moves that I believe separate the best from the rest. And in our session together, we're going to be breaking down 6 game-changing rules that are going to help you build stronger relationships, exceed expectations, and lead with impact. You're going to walk away with knowing a few things. Number one, you're going to walk away with knowing how to create unforgettable customer experiences. Secondly, you're going to learn the leadership habits that truly drive lasting success. And thirdly, you're going to learn some small moves that I believe turn ordinary into extraordinary. If you want to win, not just today, but every day, this session is for you. Join me at Accelerate, and let's close the gap between where you are and where you could be, 1 inch at a time. We'll see you there.
We are here with Scott and with Ray. How are you guys doing today? I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, doing great, brother.
Doing great, Jeremiah. Thank you for having us.
Well, thank you guys for being willing to be a part of this conversation. I think it's very inspiring that you guys are so community oriented with your businesses and with your leadership styles. So I'm really thrilled to get this started.
There would not be a Maple Street if not for community. Hands down, period. Done. When we built Maple Street, but when we first started it, how did we come up with a menu? Well, neither of us had any restaurant experience. Neither of us had any culinary background. And here we are opening a restaurant after both of us didn't have jobs. It's a recipe for failure, for sure. What did we do is we had our brand identity, this comfort food with a modern twist built around fresh baked biscuits. And then everything got filtered through that. And so what we started doing is that every Thursday night, we'd invite our friends and my neighbors to our house, and we would have these food throwdowns at our house for 5 months. Every Thursday night, our friends and neighbors got free food throwdowns from us. And they helped us. And I had this Excel spreadsheet, Jeremiah, where they would rate and rank the food. After 5 months, we kind of had our menu. And they helped us go through that whole process. We had robust discussion around it. And so when we got done with that, it was time to name the concept. We didn't have a name. Now we got a menu. And I sent out to all those people who were part of the food throwdowns, Jeremiah's, a list of like 30 different names that I just came up with. And there was like White Way Biscuits and White Way Biscuit Company and White Mountain. And one of them was Maple Street Biscuit Company, because there's maple syrup in the biscuit recipe. It just kind of made me think, okay, maple. So I put this on there. And so I sent out those 30 names, and they sent me back, and overwhelmingly, one name came back as the name, Maple Street Biscuit Company. But I was a little frustrated with that. And I flipped it back to everybody, said, okay, here's the one that came. I said, but what if I can't find a location on Maple Street? Is that going to confuse people? And they're like, no, no, people get it. It's this idea about authentic and fresh, and which is good because the first location we found was on San Marco Boulevard, and that would not have worked out. So they developed the menu, they developed the recipe. When we found this location, it was a former Moe's. We had 8 weeks. We said we're going to do our build out. Um, we had people from our community, from our church, who just volunteered to come help us build it out. Kemp Roddy came and he worked at Sherwin-Williams as a representative for a paint company, and he's in there helping us put wood on the walls and to go do that. And then the day we opened, there were 13 people from our church who came and worked for free just to help us do it, which is crazy. I didn't expect it, didn't I? But they this was our community. They were bought in, and they came and they worked with us just because they wanted to help. And Maple Street was always a community. There would not be a Maple Street Biscuit Company if not for community. They made it happen. Yet, God had given me years in the business world, in the grocery business, to experiences that were good and some really bad, that allowed me to be able to know you have to know who you are. When you're building a brand, I say this one statement: it needs to be a complete thought. That when people walk into your concept, they need to look at it and say, the menu, the design, the guest experience, everything together, it makes sense, connects. It's a complete thought. Sometimes people go open a concept, and they think they've got this recipe and it's great, and so they'll build a counter and put a register on it and buy some tables and chairs and put it in there, and that's okay, but it's just all disconnected. We wanted people, when they walked in Maple Street Biscuit Company, say, we know why it's named what it's named. We know why the things on the menu are on the menu. We know why when they have the guest experience and they call out the name for the food, why they do it the way they do it. We know why they have coffee mugs where you can get all the free coffee you want sitting up on the wall, that it's all one complete thought. And so the community got us there, and our job is to make sure we serve the community the best way by knowing, be really good at something.
So before you started Maple Street, did you already have in mind the idea of a community store? Like, you just knew it was going to be a community store, or did this come after the communities began to really help you and uplift you really?
Yeah, the term community store came around in the first month of us being open. Um, our mission, our guiding principles all happened in the first month. There was there was no grand plan. So I say it this way now, Jeremiah. Thank God I lost my job. And I wasn't saying it at the time, because at the time, I was a lay pastor in our church, and I was, because of my human resources background, for many years in the grocery business, that if you were making a career change or graduating from college, needed to get a job, they'd send you to me and we'd talk about what we could do to help you make that step. And they one day in church, this young man tapped me on the shoulder. I didn't know who he was. He tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, I'm Gus, and Pastor Brian said he'd talk to you." And I said, "Okay." And I knew what that meant. And he'd been in construction. His job had gone away and needed one. He had a family with 2 kids. And so we met, put a resume together, got him a job offer in Sarasota, Florida. It was a great offer, more money he never made. And we're sitting at the Starbucks there in Jacksonville talking over the job offer. And I look at him and I say, "I'm about to be on the other side of the table." He goes, "What do you mean?" I go, "Well, the company I work for was just bought out by a private equity group. They'll bring in their own executives, which they should do, the people that they know." And I said, "Then I'm going to have to go figure out what I'm going to do." And it was kind of the fateful question. And he said, "What are you going to do?" And I had these 5 business ideas because I wanted to stay in town. And one of them was a restaurant. The only thing I knew about it was this: comfort food with a modern twist built around fresh baked biscuits. That's all I knew. Um, he says in a couple of days, "Hey, I want to do that restaurant idea with you." But it all came from that one statement. But as we were open and working with the team and with Gus and I, we sat down in the community table up front and um, we started talking about why are we doing this. And our mission came out: help people, serve others, be a part of the community. Help people, serve others, be a part of the community. And then there were four principles that we sat down and we talked about, and those guided us the whole time for the whole 13 years.
Okay. How did you build a sense of belonging for the employees and customers within the organization?
Yeah, I will tell you, um, I've been shocked about how some of this happened with it. So we'd been open 3 weeks at our very first location, and we're just trying to figure this out. And Saturdays were our big days for us. We were closed at Sunday at that time, and Saturdays were our big days. And so we had just finished up our third Saturday, and there had been an art fair outside, and we had been lined up all day long. More business than we ever anticipated that third day, and it was so busy as we couldn't even get people breaks. And so I'm getting trying to get people water so you know keep refreshed. But the whole day from 7 to 2 o'clock, we're on the line making food, getting gas, and it gets 2 o'clock, and I am feeling so guilty about these people didn't get breaks. So I gave Gus some money, said go down to the pizza place, buy a bunch of pizzas, bring them back, and we'll sit at the community table here with all of our team, and we'll get pizza to say thank you for what they did for the day. And so he went and got pizza, brought it back to the community table. We sat down, and we're all talking about the day and what it was, and they all knew what our sales goal, what we were trying to accomplish, and that we beat it, and and so they're all excited about it, and and so we're eating the pizzas and having this family time together. And there's this young lady, Keely Transu, sitting next to me. She's I think 15 at the time. She worked for us for many years after that. I'm sitting there feeling really guilty, and to this team, and that we sorry we couldn't give you breaks, and how bad it was. And we finished up this family time talking about what they'd done and what they'd accomplished, and giving them pizza and thanking them. And I hear her turn to the young man sitting next to her and say this statement. She goes, "I love working at this place." And I'm like, "What? I just worked you all day long. I couldn't give you a break. I'm feeling bad." And she says, "I love her." It just drove home to us how important it was that they were the story. That sitting down with them, talking about what happened through the day, that them knowing the goals that we're trying to accomplish and what that meant. Telling what the guests said about the day, thanking them personally, and then giving them something tangible. Um, it just set this groundwork of that's the way we do things. That we're in this together. And so every store on a repeated basis would have family times on Saturdays after our busy days to say thanks to the team members.
Wow. That must be such an honor to be a part of that type of a family structure in a business, especially a restaurant business. Ray, so just how do you see community impacting the early stages of a restaurant's growth? Like from your perspective and in your consultations and stuff.
Well, I think it's a lot of what Scott has talked about, Jeremiah. What I find out with leaders and at every level is that you really have to be authentic in what you feel and then what you go and do. And the worst thing you could do is lose integrity with hearts and minds of very, very great people who put trust in you. So I always say when I go into a restaurant, whether I see your commercials on TV with the best commercials in the world, and then all of a sudden I have an expectation. I want to go work at that place. It seems like family, the food is good and everything is great. They have this great manager in the commercial that cares about. So that's my expectation. That's where I'm going. That's why I'm going. So when I go in and start work, what does my first 2 or 3 days look like? Does my expectation equal my reality? In most cases, it doesn't. And at that point, that's where you start to lose me. You start to erode trust in, and so you've got me in, but the reality of my expectation does not match up. And I think so. The sweet spot for me, and I always tell operators, is that I'm coming to work for you. I have an expectation. How close is expectation to my reality? How often do you engage me? How often do you spend time with me? How often do you care about that? This is my first 2 weeks, and it's the scariest time of my life. And I want to be part of this family. And if it looks different, you lose me. And I think that's a big miss in brands and operational world. Other thing I'll tell you is that um, the first 30 days of you working with me in a brand are the most important days because I need to get my muscles up to where I can feel comfortable working in this brand. And so I should tell general managers, I would normally not have more than 5 people working in a single week that I hired. They're new people, right? Why could I not call them every day after every shift and check on them? Why could I not do it? It's only 5 of them. And if I had to spend 10, 15 minutes just to check and just see how their day was. And every time I did that, I found out something I didn't know. And my most famous story was someone called me and said, "Hey, I love this restaurant, but why don't you care about females working in this restaurant?" I go, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, what do you mean?" They said, "Do you know that I've told one of your managers 4 or 5 times that the hot water in the employee restroom, the faucet handle is broke? In the guys' restroom, employee restroom, it works perfectly. They never complain." So the perception was that we could have lost those employees or several employees simply because there was perception because we weren't engaging, we wasn't spending time with employees, we wasn't talking about that. They had perceived that female employees weren't welcome to work in this particular brand, and that's an extreme circumstance, but things like that happens all the time. I didn't get trained right. You don't even know. You don't even know the person's been working for you for 3 years is threatened by me being there, and they don't treat me right because they think I'm there to take their job. So I just think it's really about if you say these things, that's my expectation. If you show me these things, that's my handbook. I see it all the handbook. I see it on commercials. But then when I come in, what's my reality? And I think that's a bit miss with a lot of leaders not really knowing what's reality versus expectation.
Is there an expectation that you do put on the managers of leading with integrity, leading according to the brand, and how do you build that into the structure of your company for either of you guys?
Yeah, Ray, I can add to that. And but um, two things I'd say. First, I have this statement that say, "Trust is our number one filter." Trust is if I can trust you and you're teachable, we can go do a lot of things. If I can trust you and you're not teachable, we can do a few things. But it doesn't matter if you're teachable or not, and I can't trust you, we can't do anything. Trust is the number one filter. If I can trust you, then we can go do anything. And that's a really important thing. Uh, that they have to. It's not just that we can trust them; that they can trust us. So one of the things that so I'll go to the second statement. I'll come back to that to that as a follow up, an illustration of that. So let me just give a very practical way in which we start to make that connection with people. The first thing that I do with team members is I'll sit down, I'll get a cup of coffee. I tell people my job is to drink a lot of coffee, Jeremiah. The team does all the work. And I'll just get sit down with people, a team member and a cup of coffee, and I'll say, tell me your story. If you sit down and just let people talk and they think you care, you'll be amazed at what they'll tell you. Life is hard sometimes. And we got people who are on our teams on our families and our communities they're going through tough things, and they open up and they share those things. Every time we open a new store, community store, the night before we always take the leadership team, the full time people out for dinner, and we sit at a big table and we go through the round with that one question: Tell me your story. And we all listen to everybody's story. Because if we're going to be in this life together, if we're going to come along and help each other, we got to know where people are at, right? So one of those, bring it back to an illustration of that first one, is that we were opening a store in Texas, and we met there and having the dinner the night before, and a young man, I say young man, he's probably in his late 30s, his turn, and I look at him and say, tell me your story. And he just starts to open up. He's been in the military for many years, had many terms of service, and he it was back or coming back, I think it was, and his wife got in a car wreck. He just had started working for us. His wife gets in a car wreck. He just reach out on a text, which is text group for fun that we do with the teams, and said, "Hey, who do I get?" Tara, our chief people, have reached out to him. Immediately found out what it was. We got him a flight to go where his wife was at to get him taken care of, and make that connection. And he starts. Here's this guy who'd been in the military for years, and you could see he looked like a military person. And he starts crying at this table with all these people, saying, "I've never had anybody who showed me that they cared like that." Um, all it was us just knowing his story and how we could come alongside. It is such a simple conversation, but such a powerful process that happens if we just take a few minutes to stop and hear people's story. And that just starts to build the relationship, but it starts to build the trust, which everything's built on.
So that's so powerful. And it's, to me, it's like, well, why not? Why do companies not do this? Why do they not care to hear the story, care to learn the individuals working for them? Why do they not care to build that sort of a trust?
One is, it's not the way in the restaurant world we've been taught to operate. When I opened up I was going to go for open our first one. Our food purveyor, who'd been a chef, just warned me that the restaurant business, was a tough business. There's this seedy, under, grimy bottom of people who go from one restaurant to another restaurant to another restaurant, and they're just a really rough element. But that's what you have to deal with. I wasn't willing to accept that. I told Gus, I want this to be a place that my daughter comes works. It's going to be okay. I want to know that if my teenage daughter's here, that I'm going to feel good that she spent a day here. So we made a couple of simple rules that everybody had to live by. One, nobody's allowed to holler at anybody. If you do, you lose the right to be on the team. That included me. Two, nobody's allowed to any cuss words, curse anybody. If you do, you lose the right to be on the team. That included me. And every leader that we had, everybody lived by those rules because I wanted to know it's hard enough, but could it be possible for the 8 hours they came worked with us, that was their safe space? That even if they had to go home to a tough world, that home environment wasn't what it was supposed to be, that for these 8 hours, I'm okay. So one is, I think we've been taught in the restaurant business is that's just the way it is. I would submit we shouldn't accept that. If we really care about community, we should not accept that. That's there. Secondly is, it seems hard to really get to know people and care about them. It's not. That's the secret. It's not. People want you to know about them. People want to share what's going on in their lives. They're thankful there's people who are alongside to go do that. Every month we have a leadership training where we bring all the leaders in and we go through this initial conversation. And I do a leadership training about my leadership philosophy on the levels of initiative and freedom. But we also go through tell me your story. And so we have one that came from Knoxville, and he was just a new assistant manager. And he starts opening up his story, and he starts sharing. I've been my my, my story is I've been struggling with drugs. I've been addicted. I'm trying to turn my life around. Um, and he says, when my community leader asked me about what's going on in my life, I told her that. He goes, I assumed she was going to probably fire me. He goes, but I'm just trying to be honest about where I'm at in life. He goes, but I understand businesses don't want people to work with them who've had drug problems. Her answer to him, as he's telling the story, is she said, what can we do to help you? Not I'm going to fire you. Not I'm going to watch you. Not we're going to drug test you every month. We'll watch for things that are a problem, right? That's what we do. But it was, what can we do to help you? That young man, shocked that was the response. Isn't that what we want out of us in the restaurant business? Isn't that what we want to be able to say? It's not that people came and worked for us and then they went on with their tough lives, but they came and worked for us and then their lives were better. Whether they stay with us, that their lives were better.
Wow. How can companies adapt this sort of a mindset into their organization to where they do care, they do listen? They're, maybe they've been in a local restaurant for 20 years and that just hasn't been the culture. How can they shift the culture within their organization?
Well, what I'll tell you, and this is just my point of view, and I think, I've got smacked around as an operator for so many years, and I always tell people the things I didn't like or the things that didn't work. There was lessons in that, and I got mastery to never ever do those again, but always enhance the things that worked always. And so, but one of the challenges for operators in at every level, all the way up to CEO level, is that there's this balance of really understanding I could have high discipline to the brand. These are the brand's absolutes. These are things that we will not compromise on. We will not compromise on treating our guests like an honored guest in our own home always. We will that's discipline. We will not to every guest we will keep our brand's absolute. But guess what else is just as equally urgent and important is what we're talking about, how we feel about our employees and how we feel about our guests. And some people think it's an and or conversation. I could do it here. I could be tough. I could be discipline minded. I could just not compromise and I could be here. Or I can just have the most kumbaya moment in the world in my restaurant and everybody just loves coming to work here and there's no rules. The reality of people want both and they both are equal. Employers will tell you, I want to work in an environment where I know there are rules and the train runs on time. I know what to expect when I walk in. And so there's that perception that you be one or the other. It's not an and or it's an and. That's number one. The second thing, to Scott's point, um, one of the best lessons I had came from my daughter. And my daughter was working at a Cracker Barrel that I was divisional vice president of. And one day she came home, and it was a tough restaurant. And she came home, she goes, Dad, and she was excited. She goes, I got some great news. I got another job. What? You work for the company? And she goes, yes, you're going to be so excited. I got another job. I'm going to work with my best friend over at this concept next door. Now I'm really intrigued. My daughter is leaving the company I work for to go work. And so now I want to know why. Because if we don't do some of the things and get learnings from it, how can we get better? So I said, well, okay, talk to me about it. And so right away my mind went, it was about a raise. It was about All the things that most leaders think. You know what was it about? It was about that her best friend told her the next door company really cared about their employees, really cared about her being a senior in high school, knowing that she had a life outside of work, knowing that she wanted to go and do some things with their friend in high school. But she went down these things and she talked about, well, where you that this place is chaotic. I don't want to work in a stressful, chaotic situation. No one talks to you. The more tenured employees, they yell at you and all that stuff that Scott is talking about. But you know what, Jeremiah? The last thing she talked about, there was no raise. She didn't get a raise to go there. She talked about all the things, and I think that's a big miss. And what we talk about, and Scott and I talk about this a lot. What we talk about is really treating everyone as an honored guest in our own home. If you come in, how am I going to treat you? How would I like to be treated? And making sure, how do we make you feel? And I think that that's what, so the bottom line is you got companies fighting. The number one thing they talk about is retention, getting, keeping, and growing employees. They'll talk about that on surface. That's what we got to do. We got to get talent. What they don't talk about is that I have people in my building. What are the tactics and actions and intentional for me to keep the employees I have, make them feel special without losing my high discipline of we're still going to run the plays that we need to run, but we're going to run them the way that let you feel that you're important to us. We want you to be here. We're going to grow. And both of those things are the same. It's going to be a great place for you to work at, but guess what? We're going to do what we're supposed to do when we're supposed to do it. And I think that that's a big miss in what we're trying to teach as leader as we go forward. So I just want to share that.
Everything Ray said is right on. But I'd like to take it a step back because I think the first question we have to ask and answer is why am I in business? Ask the question, how is it that we get restaurants to think this way? And the first step is to ask, why am I in business? Now, when we opened up Maple Street, my only goal was to help this young man initially that needed a job. I told Gus, I said, he said, hey, I want to do the rest of the business. I said, okay, we'll work on it. I'll set you up. I'll work with you for 6 months to teach you how to run it. Then you'll have a paycheck for your family, and then I'll go figure out what I'm going to go do. That was the plan. Why we're doing this new one, Calico Cactus, that Ray and I are working on, the modern taco shop. My former general counsel, she still does work for us from Maple Street. When I told her we're going to do this, and Ray and I were working on this, she's like, "Why, Scott? Why are you doing this? So why are you on a sailboat down in the Caribbean? Because I love sailing a boat." She said, "You earned it," and I said, "I'm not doing this to have a business for profit. We got to make a profit, and we can talk about why that's critical." But it's the platform to be a part of people's lives. The easiest way Ray and I get to be able to pour ourselves into people's lives to make a difference is by having Calico Cactus, growing Calico Cactus. Being successful at Calico Cactus earns us the right to go be a part of more people's lives. And so for me, I'm a man of faith. That's important to me as I go live my life. And John Calvin, who Jeremiah was a great theologian, is the first person to really write about that a business person should make a profit. Now, you would think that would be great. It'd be a business person, an economist, a politician. Here's a theologian saying a business person has responsibility. I'm like, why would he say that? And he lived during the feudal times where people lived on the landowner's property and served the landowner to make a living for their family. And their cities were just coming about, and people are moving to cities and setting up businesses. And he said, "Great." He said, "But if you're a person of faith, you're a person who wants to make a difference." He said, "You have a responsibility to go into that community and to be the best business people there are." because of what you're going to do with that profit. He said, you go there and you be salt and light in those communities. So don't, you got to be better than the person who's just going in to make a profit. The Scrooges of the world who are trying to count their coin. His submission was go be business, but be the best business people. Make the most profit because of what you're going to do with that to change people's lives. And so, our responsibility as business people has always been at Maple Street, and candidly, why Cracker Barrel bought us, was to be the best at what we do, to excel at being business people. That's Ray and I are working at Calico Cactus is to do this really well because it earns us the right to go be a part of a lot more people's lives. Bad business people lose the right. Good people, business earn the right. But that goes back. You got to ask yourself the question: why am I in business? It doesn't mean that you're not going to make a profit, because if your mission is up here and it is a lofty mission and it's to change the world, then you're going to say, I got to be the best business person out there. I got to make the most profit because I'm going to go change the world. And so stepping back, how do we change it? Why am I here? Why am I in business? Ask that question and answer it.
That's such a great reminder, because I think a lot of times we can get lost in the sauce of life, or, just get caught up in the grind to where you're just focused on the future. You're not focusing and reflecting on the past. One thing that you kind of brought up that I would love to ask is, so with everything we're talking about with Maple Street and just the community aspect of it, what led to the selling of that company?
There's so many parts to this story. So we went along and um, we had growing, and Cracker Barrel had reached out to us initially to buy us when we had 6 stores, and that didn't work out. And they went and opened up some stores similar to ours. And I will tell you that I'm a driven person, but the team would tell you this put fire in my bones. And we came up with this plan that we're going to go from 6 community stores to 25 community stores in 18 months. But we weren't going to tell anybody. No press releases, no announcement. We wanted to say in 18 months for everybody to look around and say, hey, what in the world happened here? These guys had a handful of stores, now they're all over the Southeast. And for anybody who wanted to compete with us to rethink that strategy. And the idea was, of course, whoever's to market first is the market leader. They own the concept, the brand. And anybody who comes along, who's just copying them, right? We wanted to own the brand for this comfort food of the modern twist around fresh baked biscuits. There's a lot of people who copied us now, and that's great. Go do it. So we went and did that. We made some mistakes along the way. I can talk about those a little bit too if you want to, in the section we call the messy middle. But as we came through that and we got to there, we came to the point where we realized if we're going to continue this growth, we needed the right partner to help us. And so we started considering what that looked like. Somebody with expertise and financing. And at that point now we're at 33 community stores. So we had worked with Piper Jeffrey and started to put ourselves out there. And we had some people who started talking to us about it. And Cracker Barrel had these stores that were like a Maple Street called Holler and Dash. Ray knows those. And they had 7 of them. And I talked to my CFO and I said, hey, they've got them, but they've not really added to them. I said, I wonder if they just kind of paused on that and said, since they're very similar to Maple Streets, they'd be easily conversions. I wonder if they'd be willing to sell those to us. Then we could take our 33, add 7, have like 25% sale unit growth, just boom, and still go to market and make us even more attractive. And he said, yeah. So I reached out to the CEO. The CFO called me back and told them what we were looking at. And if they're interested in selling them, we'd be interested in buying them. Now, Ray knows this, not everybody. If they had said yes, I didn't have the money to buy them. I just figured we'd figure it out, Jeremiah. So we took the step. But I told them we're looking for the right partner and wanted to grow. And they called me back a couple days, said, no, we're not interested. But if you're interested in looking for the right partner, we'd like to talk to you again. And so we spent 10 months doing due diligence. Candidly, that was hard on the team because before then they were kind of the enemy. They had gone and were doing concepts like us, and but I've never found bitterness to be a good motivator. The question is who's the best partner, and after 10 months, we said they're the best partner. And let me just put a real stake in the ground here, because God timing for things is the timing we could never imagine. Because they bought us in November of 2019. Here we are, this small startup, scrappy startup. We had to make money to pay for money. We didn't have, extra. 3 months after they bought us, we had to close every dining room in the company down because of a pandemic. My CFO calls me and says, Javier calls me and says, Scott, if you had not had the acquisition, do you know what conversation I'd be having with you today? And his point was, I'd be talking to you about, can we survive? Do we file bankruptcy? We had now had a partner who had the resources to weather the storm and allow us to continue to grow. And here's the neat part of the story. Those 7 Holler Dashes, they gave to me. I didn't have to buy them, Jeremiah. They gave them to me, and we converted them into Maple Streets.
So it seems like as we continue to talk about community, it's really about knowing when to go from the community that's around you and then finding partnership in others who can help build you up as well, right? I think it's really beautiful how in this story, from the inception of it, you had the community around you who they were choosing the recipes, they helped you come up with the name, and then you got to the point where you did your due diligence, and now a partner who you could have allowed to be your enemy, you chose to become community with them as well, and it just speaks to the brand and how ingrained that integrity and that trust was within you guys. That's something I really love that.
Yeah. Which is again, trust is the number one filter, right? For everything we go do, and building that at all levels. It is. So if you talk to our vendors, we don't call them, Ray knows this, we don't call them vendors. We call them partners. And it's strange to people. Why is it that way? And it's because when I met with Cisco, and I would meet with Raywald, the president, Rick Raywald, the president of Jacksonville, a couple of times a year for lunch, and we talk over the business. And I told him, I said, Rick, I can buy groceries from anybody. I don't need a supermarket. I need somebody who's going to help me succeed. I need a partner in this industry who's going to help us figure out how to go do this. And I said, but the way we win is that we both win. And so I said, tell me about your business, Rick. And he spent an hour explaining to me what the food purveyor business was like. I learned that day that it's about logistics. It has nothing to do about food and margins. It's all about logistics. And here was the key statement. I need the most cases on a truck per delivery. That's what he cared about. I said, Rick, if that's what's important to you, I said, I will only take 2 trucks a week and I'll drive everything through there. I won't buy from other food purveyors. I'll drive everything. I'm not going to go and look at the places who have the best price on chicken this week. I'm not going to go, US Foods and PFG. Buy everything from you. And so you'll get full trucks only twice a week. And I said, then I just need you to know from you that you're going to get me the best chicken prices on a consistent basis. And we both win. And that's the way we went to market. And here's the crazy thing out of that, which Ray will know this too, is that when Cracker Barrel bought us and they looked at our pricing, they have a different company, and they looked at our pricing on eggs. Maple Street was paying cheaper price on eggs than they were that day. This huge company, and we were paying less on eggs that day, which I wish I could pay those prices today with the way the eggs are now. But that Cisco was a partner. We've been with them for then 12 years of buying food without going somewhere else because the idea was a partnership. And we say that to everybody that's in there. Our point of sale company that Ray met with the CEO of it, Greg DeCott. He and I met in Atlanta with him, Rebels System. And Ray was Rick DeCott said. Greg DeCott kept saying, "I wish people thought about business the way you guys do." Because so many people are calling us just to say, "How can I get another penny off?" And he goes, "We'll figure out how to get pennies." He goes, "But to teach each other respect." He goes, "My team will do whatever you guys want, just because they know you care." I, and you say, "Well, I'm paying them; they ought to care." Yeah, that's true. But if you really, really want them to care about you being successful, don't look at them as a vendor. Look at them as a partner. They got a bit. We only win when we both win. And when we both win, we go do this for 10, 15 years. Now you're talking about something special.
That's right. And if you think about that, Jeremiah, think about everything we've talked about. It's the same. We feel the same about vendors. They're partners. They're along this journey with us. Well, it's no different than employees. Employees, we say, and we believe we're the least important people in the building. And when I say that, people exhale because they know you're in it with them. Let's be in it together. It's not about titles. It's funny that Scott and I were talking the other day, and we were talking about if, God forbid, a building is on fire, you know, and you have to get out the building with your life. People don't think about titles. They think about who probably has the most knowledge, or I can, to the word Scott spoke of, trust, that they would say, this is the right way to get out. Would it be the CEO of a multi-billion dollar company? Or will it be the janitor that spends 5, 6 days a week knowing about every door, every key? This is the way you go. So it's never about titles. It's about who do I trust? And that's what we spend a lot of time on with our guests. Our guest has an expectation that when I load up the family to get in a car, I trust that you're going to care about my experience. I trust. I don't need to hear about hamburger being frozen, or I need to hear about this being a problem. I trust that my experience that day is going to be handled by the brand I trust. And I love that. And that's a big miss in a lot of brands. It's like, especially post COVID, well, you got to understand we're having troubles. Well, the origins of those troubles, because you have a high churn, you have a high turnover rate. People don't like to stay in chaotic environments. So that's what we're speaking to, just to add some color to that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
This has been such a great conversation. And before we get to the close, from you both, I wonder, what are your hopes for how the future leaders can utilize the idea of community to build success in their restaurants?
I'll go short and quick, Scott. I spend a lot of time not telling, but working with COOs and people who ask, and I don't have all the answers. It's just my point of view. I think sometimes we make restaurants into something very complicated. And I tell people, you keep it simple. If you want me to go relentless and be aligned with you, you keep it simple where not only I understand it, not at the level of a C-suite or senior leaders, but can I get this down to my team inside the four walls so they can execute it? Or are we so impressed with ourselves that we're going to put this complicated plan together and there's nothing wrong with the plan except people can't follow it because no one can execute it or understand it? So that's number one. The second thing is, Have an environment where, and Scott and and Scott is the best at this, people will come up and say to us, hey, I need some clarity on what you're talking about. I want to do what you're saying, but I don't understand it, and I want to have some clarity on it. And once I get clarity on it, I'm all in. There's not, you got to have the environment where I feel okay to ask a question. And it's not a sign of weakness that I'm asking about. It's not a sign of non commitment, but I just want to have clarity if I'm going to be committed to it. And the third piece, let's be aligned. Don't have your boss to come in and talk to me about something that my boss has never said a word to me about that is important to him or is important to her, but I'm getting sideswiped by this. We're not aligned. It's not. It might be urgent to you, but the guy or the young lady I report to, I didn't know it was important to that. So it's always that push and pull and a lack of alignment. It should be from what's important to the brand all the way down to what's important to the great leaders inside the four walls. Not that it's going to be perfect, not there's not going to be some cascading gaps there, but it should not be a total miss. So I always say keep it simple. Make sure I have an environment where I could seek to understand if I don't understand it, and so I can get committed to it. And the third thing is, I want to be totally aligned so we're all pulling in the same direction. This is our goal. This is how we're going to go and get it. So that's my thought.
Yeah, and I'd say when it comes to that word community, that concept community, um, that for lots of people in our industry, it almost becomes overwhelming when they say, "Well, how are you part of the community?" And the first answer would say, "We work with this group, we work with that group," and which are all good things. Um, but I would say to start building community, that community starts in the store. Before you start to walk out the door and see how I go help this organization, the 27 people on your payroll who are part of your family now, you got to know where they're at in life. You got to have asked the question, tell me your story. And you got to know if we're going out, and we do, we have Day of Good that we do every year, and we go work with, places that are helping assist people who are struggling in life, and um, and whether it's packaging things, taking goods to them, and giving to people who are trying to just make it through the week. That's all great, but if you got a person on your team who's struggling to pay their electric bill this week, that's the kind of things we got to know. Community starts in store. Community starts by coming along the 27 people that are on your family now and making sure they're making it along in life so that when they walk out the door at the end of the day and they go to their 27 parts of that community, they are equipped to go make a difference in their 27 parts. It multiplies itself in significant ways. So the first step to saying, I'm going to be a part of the community is to own the community you got. Own those 27 people. Start there and let that start to grow. And that becomes a really powerful compounding process that happens.
Wow, that's so great, man. When I look at just where since I've been working with Prosper the last like 8 months, that's one thing that I have found so significant here is the idea of community. The fact that my leaders they do ask, "Hey, how are you doing? Hey, are we? How are we doing? How are we assisting you? How are we enabling you and empowering you to do better and to excel in this organization?" Like just I've worked in other jobs, and I never felt that way. Maybe my last job, I worked at a church before, and there was definitely a community aspect there. But the other corporate jobs that I worked, it was like this weird detachment of them feeling entitled to me because they were giving me a check. So now working with Prosper and having leaders who do make me feel validated, like I do have a voice, it has been such a great experience. And the fact that you guys are doing this in the restaurant industry is really incredible because from what I watching Gordon Ramsay or watching The Bear, it seems like restaurants are very tense, they're very stressful, they're very chaotic. So the fact that you're able to bring it into a family type of vibe and allow that community to feel heard, to feel seen, to feel like their words are validated, to feel like, whatever is going on the outside, we care about that and we're going to even assist you wherever we can. That I really commend you, and it explains why you have been successful. It explains why Maple Street Biscuit was successful, and I'm really looking forward to one day visiting Calico Cactus with you guys.
We'd be honored to have you, brother.
Yeah. So thank you guys. This has been the Prosper Brief. This has been such a great conversation with Ray, my good friend, and Scott. I hope to see you guys again. And until next time, have a good one. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and join us next time for more insights from industry leaders. We'll see you next time here on the Prosper Brief.